Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Beyond the Superficial. We are chiropractors and functional medicine practitioners at Synapse Center for Health and Healing, located in Eagan, Minnesota. Information shared in this podcast is not intended to diagnose or treat any medical conditions. Please consult with a primary care provider before engaging in any new activity or protocol. With that in mind, let's dive into this episode.
Okay, so welcome to Beyond the Superficial. Today I have myself here, Jenica, a health coach here at Synapse. We also have Ellie, our mental and emotional health coach, and Dr. Katie and Dr. Ashley, both chiropractors here at our clinic as well. Today we want to bring up the conversation about the importance of relationships and connections. So we talked about dreams, purpose last week a little bit. That is really important to then move on to talk about, these dreams and purposes might include other people. And if they don't, people should be part of your support system throughout the process of reaching those dreams and those goals. So any interactions that we make throughout our day, whether that's at the gym, at our wellness clinic, with health coaches, with your chiropractors, with your coworkers, with your friends, with your family, all these people that are part of your daily life have an impact on your health. It can be a positive, it can be a negative, it can be that didn't really change much. How do I then bring in a positive influence on my health? So one of the main questions that I wanted to ask is, why is building and maintaining social relationships important to your health?
Yeah, I can kick off here. How we socially connect with others is actually very deeply connected to our autonomic nervous system, which does a lot of things for our body function. It's a lot of things that are running kind of on the autopilot. So our breath, our heart rate, our digestion, and so many other things like our hormones. And so when we have a social support system, that can actually create a buffer for stressors, because our nervous system is responsible for how are we responding to danger, to stress, to things coming our way. When we have that social support system, what it really does is, like I said, it creates that buffer, so we can actually have greater capacity for stress. More things can come into our bucket, and we can handle it because we know that somebody's got our back. We don't have to do it all alone, and that very much impacts our body as well. So we've seen people who have better social support. They have lower blood pressure, they have increased immune systems that are just boosted and better, and they have a longer life expectancy. So there's so many benefits to that, because again, we're not muscling through life alone, and we're not going into that survival mode of, okay, well, if something happens, there's no one else here. And so it's very, very vital to our survival in a lot of different ways, both physically and emotionally.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
Something my mom taught me, I think when I was a kid, was she was saying it's always good to have friends from a lot of different places. And so I was a gymnast growing up. I had a ton of teammates I was friends with. I went to church. I had people I was friends with there. I had my different set of school friends. And I think about now, I have my work friends, coworkers. I know people I see at the gym all the time. And you just have your different areas of friends. And I've always felt like that's helped me keep connections and just kind of have my social connections healthy, because you connect with people in different capacities. At the gym, you talk about different things with those people. You see them in a different light. You come to work, people know kind of your work self. You talk about work things, and you can kind of shut off the work stuff. Go home, talk to friends, family, whatever. So I think for me, it's always been important to have people that I'm friends with in all those different aspects of life too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm kind of on the mood thing too, I just think of during COVID and the shutdowns when we weren't allowed to go to the gym or all these things. I was just so sad. Just not being able to see my gym friends or people from school. You can definitely tell the impact of that pretty quick. Because even if I'm down or run down from being sick or something, I'm not able to go to the gym for 2 days. I'm just sad. I just want to see my people. It makes a huge difference.
It does, that mental side of things. I mean, I work from home at the office. Most of my interactions are virtual with patients here. And I know that's been a big shift for people. Now since COVID, a lot of even our patients work from home because they're able to do these virtual appointments with me during the day too. So that is another thing that I have to be really intentional. I love coming to the office and getting my fix for sure, and it's something I miss. I was a teacher originally, started with my education degree, and it was like over amount of people, right? Just like all day long, that energy. And so going from that to then working from home was a big switch. And so I really had to seek out ways to get that connection. Because I had coworkers and I could come in, but that was kind of pick and choosing when I could come in. And so my mornings looked different, my afternoons looked different, my evenings, I didn't have the drive home. I wasn't getting those highs with coworkers, that same high in the communication face to face versus chat too. And so those are all really, really great things. And Ellie, you brought up reducing stress, and that being one of the reasons why having social relationships is really important. And it also can be a stressor too. Do you guys see that on that side? You know, it can reduce stress with positive relationships, but some of the negative can add stressors to the body. And so patients will come to us with stressors coming from social relationships. Is there any particular things you do or work with in regards to those situations?
I guess, like, I don't know if this kind of answers the question, but, like, personally, like, I don't know if you've ever had this, but you've had, like, a few people where they almost, like, bring down your energy or, like, kind of like energy sucking almost.
Yeah, energy suckers, for sure.
That's kind of what my mind went to, where, like, you know, it's okay to maybe distance yourself. You don't have to be friends with everyone. Like, you don't have to hang out with them again if you don't want to, if it creates the opposite effect.
I think when you're in healthcare and you deal with patients all day long, you have some of those tough patients sometimes. I mean, you might have them the first part of the day and they kind of drain you, unfortunately. One of my mentors told me that obviously you're thinking about your patients all the time, but as soon as that patient leaves, close the door, kind of regroup, and then move on to the next person, and don't let that person kind of dictate your mood the whole day. And so I feel like I kind of keep that in mind. If you have a patient that's really struggling, they come in with some horrible news, you kind of have to let them shut the door, walk out, and then turn on to the next one. So not letting them shut down your mood all day long.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, not having, I mean, this is a big conversation, but not having permeable boundaries, right? As practitioners, but also as people walking around, having relationships, having families, trying to maintain all of that, finding the balance of, right, there's a spectrum that we can fall on of getting too anxious and letting people validate who we are, and that's our identity, to the opposite of, well, I'm not going to trust anyone, I'm not going to rely on anyone, and I'm just going to do life alone. And people can only get us, you know, this close to me. And so dealing with the relationship stressors of that, and how that can be a relationship stressor for a lot of people too, especially if you're on one spectrum, your partner is on the opposite, or a family member is on the opposite, and now you're butting heads. And so how do you learn to kind of meet in the middle of not having this rigid boundary of, nope, can't get vulnerable with me, to also staying open and not getting too attached, making people part of our identity, and losing a sense of self, abandoning ourselves in the process.
How do you approach someone that comes to you where they say, like, I have social anxiety, but it's still at the same point, like, having those connections are important, but still, like, dealing with that thing? Like, how do you approach that scenario?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, often I always want to meet people where they're at. So how can we kind of build where you do have capacity to show up? How do we build some of that? How do we build more safety in your system so that you can accept and receive some more connections? Maybe we start with a pet. You know, maybe that's, for some people, that feels really safe and soothing because a pet is consistent. People sometimes aren't.
True.
And so starting there, but then also slowly pushing the agenda a little bit, right? Doing a little bit of exposure of, once we have a little bit more capacity and you have a home base to run to, when that fight or flight is activated of, I don't want to be here, or I'm nervous and now I don't know who I am, how can we slowly let yourself and your nervous system get into a place where it might be a little bit uncomfortable, but we have a home base, like I said, that you can come back to, and kind of let your nervous system regulate and expand that capacity. So it's some work. It also often is a conversation of, well, what triggered that? right? We're in childhood. What were some of the beliefs that you picked up, or what were some of the experiences your nervous system had that social interaction was not safe, or it was performance driven, so you can't fully be authentic. You can only show this much of yourself. Or there was humiliation and embarrassment in the past of, well, when I said this joke, people isolated me and I no longer belonged. So in order to belong, because I need to survive to belong, I'm going to cut parts of myself off and not show up. So kind of doing both of those things, right?
Yeah.
Creating some capacity, some safety, but then also processing and letting some of those beliefs go, so that we can replace it with something else that serves us better.
Yeah, it's good.
That's great. As doctors, when people come in with not necessarily totally social anxiety, but just a lot of anxiety in general, are there things that we can do, like just a nervous system, right, out of whack? Are there things that we can do through chiropractic care to also help those things, to just regulate that nervous system and just calm things down so that we can get to a place where they can work with Ellie and work through these things and be successful?
I obviously chiropractic adjustments. I would say a lot of times with my patients, I encourage them to do some sort of like activity. Walking is like the best medicine, and especially as it starts to get nicer now. I think a lot of us were cooped up in the winter, and so I was going to say with the people working at home, I mean, I'm the same way. I leave work and it's pitch black. You just want to go home. You don't want to do anything. But now that it's getting nicer, I say just go for a walk. It doesn't have to be a 30-minute walk. It can just be down the street. Get some fresh air, some activity, some sunlight. Doing something that you like for like 10 minutes. I've had some patients where their work just kind of is in overdrive and they're so stressed by it. And the morning routine is chaotic. The night routine is chaotic and they have no time to do anything that they like. I'm like, you need to get up 10 minutes earlier and just have 10 minutes of silence. Do something that you like, read, pray, meditate, whatever you want to do, because that's going to set the rest of your day up for success and kind of calm you down too. So I would say those are kind of two things that I recommend.
Yeah.
I think I've noticed too, some of my high stress patients, just like being on my table and just them laying there.
Yeah.
Like getting your time out of the day, 15 minutes of just laying down, like just being horizontal, and just, having me just work on their back. I mean, the neurological component of just like the calming effect of touch is amazing. So you can tell it on their face when they get up, like they're stressed or just their face is more relaxed, and it's kind of like a reset for their day.
Sure.
Sometimes my patients that work from home too, you might notice this, they're the most chatty ones in the appointments. And as I'm working on them, I kind of just let them chat because it's almost like they need to get everything out and have that social interaction even though they didn't realize it. So just kind of letting them do their thing and relax.
Yeah, that's so true. Some it's like kind of their way to, get it out, or like, and then some people, they want to do the opposite, like they just don't want to talk anymore, and like that's totally fine. Yeah. I'll do my thing.
It's
gotta
therapy,
see both.
Therapy one way or another. For sure. Yeah, that's great. We do things such as clearings. Do you, either of you do the clearings with patients, and how could somebody benefit from something like that? Also, when having issues, or I guess in an area where social relationships are difficult.
Yeah, I kind of, in my history, I kind of put the question out there of, hey, what are stress levels like? And then once I get some information, if they're, open to sharing, and once they're on my table, I'll just kind of do a couple of neurological, like adrenal points and see, hey, is there something going on here? Or else I ask them to, if you had to give me the top couple stressors, and then I just muscle test them. Because really the goal of NMR is to clear the physical stress that's attached to the emotional stress and triggers. Because, as you guys know, as everyone knows, when we are stressed, literally our muscle tone increases. You can feel it, like the weight of the world on our shoulders. So essentially with clearings, we work on that same exact neurological feedback loop. We utilize that, where we work on it from the other direction. So we use the muscles and those neurological pathways to literally reset that pathway in the brain. So we reset how the muscles respond, therefore shutting down that stress or that trigger response in the brain to that emotion or to that trigger. So it's a pretty cool thing where it helps a lot of people.
Yeah.
I would say sometimes it's kind of like the missing link. So we look at physical healing, chemical, and emotional. A lot of times we probably will go physical and chemical first. I've had a couple patients where we do a lot of things are improving, but they kind of feel stuck, and I say, let's work with Ellie maybe, let's bring her in, let's try some clearings, and it seems to be that mental or emotional part is kind of stuck in progressing any other healing. So I would say that's where I'd bring in the clearings or have people work with Ellie.
Yeah.
So.
Exactly. That the emotional piece is definitely an important component, just like we talked about too. A lot of the times, in looking at the social relationships piece and the importance of the positive side of things. So we talked a lot about kind of, okay, if it is a stress, what can we do to help our bodies heal from that? Because having good positive relationships is important. So how do we get there if we have a hard time doing that? And these are great ways to be able to get ourselves there. But why do we need positive relationships, social interactions in our daily life? Well, we know that there is studies that show the cognitive relationship with that, so that there is higher levels of cognitive decline, cardiovascular issues, postmenopausal women experiencing these social or isolated situations have a higher risk of disease. And so there really is an importance to these positive relationships and the attachment to longevity for our health. So there is better health outcomes for them as well. So a part of things that we do to get a health history on people, we do ask things like that I will ask patients, like, who's in your home? What is your social support? Because that is important that you have that. And if you don't, how can we get there? And a lot of times we will have those patients work with Ellie, since I can't dive too deep into it, but I at least know, what is going to be a barrier. When I sit down for a meal, my significant other doesn't want to eat that meal with me. Well, how can I get an interaction throughout the day that's going to be positive then? Because meals are an important time to have you have to have stress reduction in order to have good quality gut health, good digestive practices and all of that. So do you see any trends from patients that have, those that have positive relationships in relation to their health outcomes?
I'd say, yeah, definitely. Because a lot of my patients who are alone or like isolated, a lot of the times their brain just like gets hyper fixated on what's wrong with them.
Yeah.
So like those are
for sure.
probably my
Absolutely.
toughest ones, because mindset is everything too. Like you have to create the mindset to heal too. So if you don't have that, which you get a lot of that from just being surrounded by people and all that. Yeah, that's kind of my tougher patients is when are just isolated and just all they think about is that, what's wrong with them.
I was going to say the mindset is so important. Like, I mean, honestly, a lot of patients that come in, they're chronically sick. They've been sick for a really long time. They're not at their best health, and they're kind of stuck in that pattern. I'm always going to have these issues. I'm always going to be in pain. And so that's why we do the mindset class, and Ellie does that, because I think it's important to see yourself. We do like a little visual of a ship that's kind of halfway sinking and then one that's thriving. And it's so important to see yourself and where you want to be in the future and kind of have that end goal in mind.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people, unfortunately, when you've been sick for so long, struggling for so long, you just kind of get stuck in that, and you need a way out and kind of to visualize that. So
Yeah.
Yeah, this is something I'm incredibly passionate about because I was a nurse for a decade before this, and a big part of that was working with autoimmune conditions. And I remember for the 5 years I was there, I was constantly asking myself the question: there's a common theme here. There's a lot of isolation and a lot of depression in this patient population, and there was, I think, 2 or 3 specific people who had a big support system. They were still engaged, they were still doing things, they were proactive, they had purpose, and they had really close family. And those 2-3 patients really stood out to me because they were, for the treatments that usually people get every 4 to 6 weeks, they were able to stretch it out and only need it, every 12 weeks. Their blood pressure was good. That was the only medication they were on. And I remember looking at that and in my mind just realizing something's missing here. There was a big missing link, and nobody was addressing the mindset or the social support or the mental health of this population. So now being here and being in a team that plugs that in and sees that as something that's so important for people to have a holistic approach to health is, like I said, something I'm so passionate about, because I've seen a lot of people heal through that. I think everyone has in this clinic of when we kind of combined the mindset, the social support with the physiological therapeutics and changes in modalities, how much more people can go. Kind of like the idea of trying to think of the quote of if you want to go far, or if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go with others. And how true that is for our health. Our body's actually built for support, and it can propel its potential so much more when we have that support.
Yeah, absolutely.
And kind of, yeah. And like back to the thing of like sharing a meal with someone. I mean, that's so important. Like even like biblically too. Just the importance and like the spiritual, component that the healing component too that happens. So like if you are isolated or you don't have many people at home, like just invite someone over to dinner. I mean, if you want to create that connection.
Yep.
I mean, you invited me over for dinner, I'd be over there in a heartbeat.
Yeah, exactly. We're all, I could use a break for my health and dinner for sure.
I know so many people that are training for marathons right now, and none of them are doing it by themselves. So that's a really good example, because, I mean, a marathon, I've never done that. I don't know if I ever will, but that's a tough thing to train for. But you think about when you're doing it with other people, it's a lot easier. You can kind of chat, you can laugh, you're struggling through it together with other people. So I feel like that's a good example.
Yeah. Yeah.
Same thing with CrossFit classes.
Yeah.
I love group classes
Yeah.
of any sort. It's just
Yeah.
fun to do the hard things together.
Yeah.
I quit a lot sooner, even with like the running stuff. Like I give up a lot sooner, or I'll make things shorter if I don't have somebody pushing me along for the goal side of things, for sure. And I think on the other side of just like laughing and having like a sense of happiness and joy, and sharing that with somebody, I can like watch videos, but how that interaction is so different. When a video makes me laugh, or there's no connection there. I have no connection to that person. I have no connection to their family. I have no connection to that animal. I have no connection. It is just, and it can be helpful for people that, are seeking a connection, but sometimes if that's our first go-to, not the ideal situation. Having, physical touch, as Dr. Ashley mentioned, is a huge piece. Like just the dopamine rush from a hug, or the thought of being in a situation where people want to hug you, or they love you, or they care about you, or that they're there for you, is really important. And so there's that piece too of just sharing an ounce of joy. I remember where, and my husband knows this too, he's like, I know exactly who I need to call and who I need to get to our house if you are in a point where you need to like have an uplift, where motherhood becomes a little much, I'm not sleeping, things are just at a place that I'm like, okay, I need to laugh, I need to find joy, I need to experience someone else other than everyone that's in my household every single day, all day long, and my husband knows exactly who to get on the phone and get to my house, or to at least get on the phone with, like even just hearing their voice, and all of a sudden I'm laughing in 2 minutes, and I feel like I haven't laughed in, feels like weeks kind of situation. And how important that is. Like for me, it's just a phone call sometimes that I just need to make.